Good evening, Ghouls and Fiends. Welcome to episode 2 of the Ministry of Horror. We had a great show last week. Also had a lot of support from Lawrence and Lee and Andy, all members of the MOS network, lots of promotion, and yeah, lots of really good feedback. So this evening, you'll see that I'm once again not alone. This evening I have with me, he is a writer and director. I have Mr. Mr. Peter Goddard. Good evening,
Hello.
Peter.
Hello. Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Right. Because it's a bit of a delay going on when you watch it on live, isn't it? It's a bit confusing, that is.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Okay, we'll get to the live bit a bit later on with our ranking. But how are you, Peter? How are you this evening?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Yeah, not too bad. How are you, Terence?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Excited to get into our 70s horror ranking, which we'll be doing a little bit later on. But first off, I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you, which I know is a bit of a surprise.
It was a bit of a surprise. I didn't read your email properly,
No?
so I didn't realise there would be questions. But
I've got some questions.
Excellent. Right. Okay.
So, what sparked your love of horror?
What, in general or 70s horror? Just in
general,
horror.
Just in general.
I don't know. It goes back to sort of a childhood love, I think. Growing up, I remember. So I think my like mum and stuff was into horror. She liked Stephen King, and I don't know what I couldn't put a start point on it.
So it's kind of just always been there. Really.
It's always been there. I've always kind of loved Halloween and stuff, and I remember there was a TV series on BBC Two called Clive Barker's A to Z of Horror, which I saw when I was very young. He used to talk about kind of like horror films and horror books and stuff like that. And I remember seeing clips on there from like Night of the Living Dead and Chainsaw Massacre and things like that when I was probably about 8. And that's something about that just sparked an interest in it for me.
Excellent. So what would you say? I know this is always a tough question because if you're like me, the numbers, the films could change from day to day. But if you had to pick right now a top 3 horror films for you, what would they be and why?
I think Halloween would be number 1. I think that's kind of an easy one. I think that's just the kind of perfect horror film in terms of just everything about it. There's just the everything from the music and the visual, the style and the story, and that's kind of the perfect horror film in my opinion. Top 3. So number 2, probably Night of the Living Dead, just because it's kind of what it did for indie horror and like indie films, and that kind of like it. I remember seeing that when I was quite young, or seeing clips from it, probably on Clive Barker's A to Z of Horror, and sort of thinking, that's something I could go out and make. That's that kind of made the whole thing, the whole world of filmmaking accessible, because it's just a group of people, one location, and just some good kind of gory special effects. And then I don't know, possibly the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just because of it's just the overall tone of the whole film. Very kind of, it doesn't show anything, but it kind of uses the kind of like the techniques and especially the soundtrack as well, and sound design to kind of like make it seem a lot more shocking and more effective than anything you can actually see on the film. Yes, I think those 3.
So a little bit of news that we were going to put on the show is that Friday, I believe it's Friday, is the release of it's now called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is another sequel, but it seems to be following the route of the 2018 Halloween film in that it's a direct sequel to the original.
Is it Netflix? Is they doing it? Is it?
It's a Netflix film, yeah.
I thought I saw the posters and stuff for it. I wasn't quite sure if it's like a series, but it's a standalone film, isn't it?
Yeah, it's set 50 years after the original, so Leatherface is in his 70s, you can assume. And it seems to be following that plot line from the Halloween 2018 film where I remember the actress's name, but not the character. Sally Burns. It's not the same.
Who was it? Played Sally Burns. Marilyn. It's Sally Burns from our film, isn't it? I think the character's called I think it's Marilyn Burns is the
Marilyn.
actress, and she plays Sally.
Right.
And that's
So
well, and Sally is it Sally Burns? I put together for Danny's character in our film.
yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the actress, sadly, the original actress, sadly
She
passed away. So they've
Yeah,
recast it, but it's her. She has been waiting for Leatherface for 50 years. The trailer looks
it's
like
basically Halloween, then, isn't
yeah, yeah.
it?
The trailer looks like it could be good, but then there's so many bad Texas Chainsaw Massacre films that I don't have high hopes.
There's one a few years ago just called Texas Chainsaw, wasn't it? And that kind of tried to recreate the spirit, and it started out. It kind of continued on from the end of the first one, wasn't it, or something? I remember seeing that, and I think if they can get like the tone and the atmosphere and the style of the original, then it's when they overproduce stuff. I didn't think much of the Halloween remake sequel.
Oh, really?
Just Halloween. Yeah, it's like the ending shot when he's in the. I don't want to ruin it if anybody hasn't seen it, but that ending shot, it just seemed a bit too sort of overproduced, sort of. I don't know.
Well, they turn him into Jason in the most recent one, Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
It's basically Jason. He takes on a whole bunch of firemen in one swoop.
Right. I haven't seen Kills yet, but
there's good moments to it. It's got some inventive kills, some pretty disturbing kills, but it's.
Yeah.
I left the cinema kind of a bit like, I'm not really sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't really that.
Did you like it more than than Halloween?
No, I prefer
the original Halloween, but Halloween. Why can't they just give like proper subtitles to these films? It's like Scream, and there's a new one called Scream.
Yeah, I think part of it is they don't want to put people off by having numbers after it, because they think the consumer might be like, oh god, this is the fifth one. I've not seen the other four. But at the same point, they're continuing the story to a degree. So surely.
But they could have gone with like Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends, and Halloween Begins or something. They could have given like just to call it the same name. It seems, especially as it's meant to be a sequel as well to the first Halloween.
Yeah.
Like if they're rebooting it and starting again, then like with Rob Zombie's Halloween, I haven't seen that yet, but that was kind of like a remake and but when it's meant to be a sequel, so you got Halloween and then this 2018 sequel also called Halloween. It just gets a bit.
Yeah, I don't like the trope of having a sequel the same name as the original. It makes no sense to me. But hey, they're making the big bucks. They must know something.
Yeah. But I will give the new Chainsaw a watch when I have the opportunity.
Yeah, same. I think I'll aim to do like a review, like a spoiler-free review on it next week. So I'll try and put some time around this weekend. Give it a little watch. If you had to show someone who's never seen a horror film before, if you had to show them a horror film that you think, okay, they're going to probably enjoy this and it may make them a fan of the genre, what do you think you would pick?
I mean, there's so many subgenres in there in the horror. So you got your found footage and you got your slashers and your. So just one. I mean, I'd be tempted to say Halloween again, just because of that. In terms of like, that's kind of like the most perfect horror film in my opinion. I don't know, but I'll go with Halloween. But then, no, I'll go with Halloween.
I'd agree. That was probably the first horror film I ever saw. It kind of feels, I guess this is for everyone when they had their kind of growing up period, but I loved the whole Mark Commode introduction to films, and when Channel 4 would have a horror season or a Stephen King season. And it was definitely the first horror that I ever saw, his introduction talking about its impact. And it's not got the gore that can put people off, the blood and guts, but it's got a lot of the tension that you really want from a good horror film. So I'd agree with that.
It's just the whole atmosphere, and and it's set on Halloween. You've got the mise en scene, if you want to go, of like Halloween decorations and horror, and the use of Steadicam and using widescreen and the music, and it's the perfect horror film. And that's all I can say.
I'll agree with that. I agree.
Yeah.
So moving on to discussing about you now. When did you decide that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
Am I a filmmaker? I mean, I don't know. I remember growing up, I used to be interested in sort of film production. I remember, I think it was on Channel 3 on a Saturday afternoon. They used to have like a behind the film kind of a little 15-minute making of type things. I remember they had one on Demolition Man when that came out, and I think there's a few other, maybe like the Terminator films. They might have had some little behind the scenes stuff, and I was always kind of interested in that kind of like backstage, because then I sort of got in when I was at school. I kind of wanted to sort of get into sort of the special effects and the kind of makeup and stuff like that. And then I think probably just going to college and just doing media and just enjoying the actual going out of a camera and filming stuff and then cutting it together. And so once again, I couldn't really put a particular point on it. I think I've always been quite a creative person. I quite like making something, and sort of filmmaking is just something that's always been a good way to do that.
So, if you had a dream project to work on that you got snapped up, either to write, direct, both, it could be that it's a remake of a favorite film or a sequel to a favorite film, or even if it's a project of your own, and some hotshot producer goes, "Here's 20 million, make the film," which is, I know in today's money is probably quite small, but in terms of for making a film is obviously still a lot of money. What do you think would be your dream project?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to. If you're saying like what film would I have liked to have made, I mean, I wouldn't say I want to remake it, but to have created something like Blade Runner, some sort of or some kind of amazing. But then you can do it for 20 million. I mean, we've always. You never really know. I mean, I've got lots of ideas and things. We've come up with scripts before, but you never know what they're going to come out like. I think to have made something like Night of the Living Dead, or something that was kind of groundbreaking, just have an idea that's kind of unique, and not that I can think of. I've got that idea yet, but I don't know. I don't know.
That's a solid answer. That it's something that comes along and people haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I
mean, something like when you first saw something like the Blair Witch Project, or that was like an amazing idea done for low budget, and or like even like Christopher Nolan's Memento, that kind of that just reinventing the genre, or Reservoir Dogs, something doing something that kind of like reinvents cinema. So that'd be cool, but I don't know. I can't think of like a book or anything like that I've read that I think I really want to make that into a film. I've got a few ideas, but nothing ready really to go into.
Work in progress.
Yeah. I mean, there's like the Graveyard Shift, which I've had for a while, but I don't think that's quite there. Who knows?
Okay. One for the future.
One for
Well, and last little question before we move on to our main event for the evening.
Yeah.
What advice do you have to anyone that's they're just thinking of becoming a filmmaker? The idea is there, but they haven't taken the next steps. What would your advice be?
Just don't waste your life. No. I mean, we're at a point now where anyone can go and make a film. Like, if you've got access to a decent camera, or even like it's develop the idea. I think because you can make people say you can make a film on your phone, which is true. But then you have to you have to make it work for the technology you're using. So when like what's his name made Paranormal Activity, he only had access to digital cameras, and so he kind of used them to enhance the story. So try and think of an idea which you can make, which is simple, involves a small cast, maybe one location, and whatever technology you have, try and utilize that to enhance your idea or the story, and just try and do something which nobody else is doing at the moment. So don't try and just copy something else. Just try and come up with an original idea. Spend time on the script, spend time on the idea, but make it so you can just go out and basically make it for like no money. And then you never know, it may be the next big thing that takes off and reinvents the genre.
Yeah, you don't know until you try.
Yeah,
And then sometimes
just go
you
and do it.
try
I
and
mean,
you go,
yeah,
okay, not for me.
just go and make it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're now going to move on to our tier list. So last week we had Danny Thompson, and we looked at 90s horror. So lots of slashers, lots of bad CGI, but generally a lot of popcorn films was what we.
I mean, I grew up in the '90s. The '90s probably would have been one of my. I think every decade's got its own style, isn't it? So, like the '50s, '60s, '70s, and '80s are the slashers. The '90s were the screams and the postmodern, and '50s and were like hammer horror. So there's I could have chosen any genre really. So.
The only era that for me doesn't seem to have a huge identity when I just think of it off the top is the 2010s, like the 90s and the even just the general sort of 2000s. I feel have their own kind of identities. They kind of cross over a bit.
Yeah,
but 2010s I can't really think of.
I don't know if it's my if I'm getting old, but I mean I grew up in the '90s, so I always remember the '90s as being like the Britpop and Cool Britannia and film like your Tarantinos and stuff like that, and then the '80s were kind of like the Back to the Futures and New Romantic and those kind of music, and the '70s were like the kind of golden age of cinema with Scorsese and Coppola, and you had bands like Led Zeppelin. So in the '60s, obviously like the Beatles, and that kind of each of those decades has like a kind of unique distinction. But then when you get to the 2000s, but I don't know if it's just me being old age, but then the 2000s to about this day, which is like 20 odd years, just sort of blurs into this one non-real kind of like there's no kind of identity really, like you say. It's all the music and all the films just don't really.
I wonder if it's something indicative, maybe with our age, or maybe it's to do with the rise of streaming. So obviously, when we both were growing up, a lot of the films you would see would be on like terrestrial TV or down the video rental place or HMV, and you'd see the titles, make a decision.
No kind of big event films. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like
the big event films are remakes and sequels with the same titles. There's nothing.
Even like music that I'm gonna sound old now, but like music since 2000s has just become the kind of garage bands, the kind of like the Strokesy, Arctic Monkey sort of the start of the 2000s, and then it's all just sort of faded off into kind of pop and hip hoppy kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I like my rock and metal, and rock these days is classic. It's just looking at the past, and kind of similar with metal. There's metal bands out there, but nothing is kind of standing out. And it could be age, but nothing just seems to be standing out to the stuff that was in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. But rather than us reminiscing about how old we've become, let's
maybe it's due to because technology is so accessible to so many people that there's so much content now, whereas like back in the 90s and 80s, and if there was less films being made, there was less music being released, but now you just got with streaming and with being able to make films and being able to record music and put it out there yourself, it's just a bit oversaturated.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much out there that it's difficult for things unless they've got like a big studio behind them or a big distribution
Yeah,
deal. It's difficult for anything really to stand out. Which I guess on one hand means that when you do come across something which is like kind of almost a hidden gem, that
yeah,
maybe it means a bit more to you as a viewer, but at the same point you've got more opportunity to miss that film because there's so much
yeah.
other crap, let's just put it that way, to sift through.
I think maybe when you had the one really good film, not to ramble on too much, but when you had the one really good film or one big event film, that lasted for years. So like if when Jurassic Park came out in '93, it was a big summer blockbuster for like the rest of the year, and then it came onto video, and then that's carried on for like 2-3 years worth of it. But when now a film comes out of the cinema, it's there for a month, and then it goes on to streaming, and then it's like the next big thing's just a couple of months away. So throughout the year you'll have a lot more content coming out and kind of passing through quicker.
We're in that era now where, especially with the internet, and we will move on to the tier list in a second. Especially with the internet, we have so much more access to what films are in production, what deals have been signed. I mean, now it used to be a film like Halloween would get released, and then maybe, I can't remember the time difference, but maybe like 3-4 years later, then a sequel just comes out and it's there. Whereas nowadays, a film will get released, and maybe even before it's hit the cinema, there's news of, oh, it's been signed up to have 2 sequels, and so you as a viewer then kind of thinking, oh, this probably isn't going to have an ending, is it? Because they're automatically thinking 3-4 films ahead.
Filming them back to back, and there's going to be released over the next 3 years, the 3 sequels, and there's no kind of like, it doesn't take on its own identity anymore. They kind of decide that it's going to have this kind of like legacy in advance, and then and it just I think stuff just comes out too quickly.
I used to
faster could be.
Growing up and obviously watching horrors, I used to find it great when you'd watch, like, I don't know, the Sci-Fi Channel, which is what I normally always go back to, the old Sci-Fi channels where I saw a lot of horror. Discovering there are sequels to films that you never even knew there were sequels to.
Yeah.
Like when I found out, oh, there's a Halloween 4, I didn't even know there was a 2 or a 3, and all of that stuff. But yeah, let's move on now to an era of cinema.
Yeah.
I know some of these, and I've got a couple in here that I know you've not seen, but I have. But the vast majority, I'm gonna be having to follow your score and your guidance on, because I haven't seen them.
Well, a lot of them I probably haven't seen in a long time, so I might not be able to remember a lot of them. So
we'll see how we get. We'll see how we get on. But so Peter is going to be joining me to rank 70s horror, and as you can see by the title when it appears on your stream, the first one we're going to look at is a film I have not seen, Bay of Blood.
Mario Bava film. When was it? 1970 something. Is kind of seen as like the grandfather to the American slasher films. Friday the 13th took a couple of kills from it. So there's like the lovers being speared on the bed, and there's a guy in a wheelchair getting a hatchet in the face. It's a great film. So it's confusing when you first watch it. It's about, if I remember, it's about a group of people who are stranded on like an island somewhere, and it's something about an inheritance, and then people are being killed off to try and get this inheritance. Okay. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's got a great look to it. It's got Euro 70s horror to it, and it's Mario Bava, but he's doing like a kind of a more kind of like straight up slasher. Okay. But no, I would definitely recommend it.
Well, we've got 5 categories. We'll start from the bottom. So awful is a film where you just think, just no way, I would not, don't watch it, don't put yourself through it. Bad, you could say maybe it's a film where it's so bad it's good, or you find some element of entertainment in it. Or you just think it's not a very good film. Yeah. Decent. We generally looked at decent as like, that's a good popcorn film. It's not great. You can put it on, pass the time. Yeah, very good. You think it's great, but it's not quite top tier. And then obviously excellent is top tier.
Is your best of the best.
Where do you see Bay of Blood, Peter?
It's in between very good and excellent. I think, let's just say very good.
Okay.
So I think one of the few of the films you've got coming up would be in the excellent. So it's not quite up there with some of these others, but
Okay.
but very good. It's an important, very influential film. It's got a million different titles like Bloodbath, Switch to the Death Nerve, and all these other things. But no, it's a good film, and it was ahead of its time.
So, I'll add that to my watch list. The
Right.
next film we're going to look at, and we're not going to do these all in alphabetical order. I'll try and jump around.
Okay.
But we're going to do one where I have to admit I feel like a bit of a poser. I was at a horror convention a few years ago when there were horror conventions in Birmingham, and I picked up a T-shirt because I thought it looks black metal. I love that kind of style, but it was for this film, which is Black Christmas. Tell me about Black Christmas.
Once again, this is another landmark. It's Bob Clark. What did he went off and made some terrible kids films later on in his career, but this is another great film. I really like it. It came out before Halloween. And Halloween took a lot of influence from it. It's got the kind of the killer menacing people over the phone trope, and but it's got some great sequences in it.
Was this the film that popularized that moment in horror of the call is coming from inside the house?
I think it was, but there's a lot of films that came around at the same sort of time. There's one called When a Stranger Calls, and there was another one called He Knows You're Alone, which I think may have had the same idea. I can't remember if Black Christmas was before those or after those, but it's definitely that's the twist at the end when they're in that the police call her back and say we've traced the calls back and the killer's in the house sort of thing. So yeah, but it like I said, it came out long before Halloween, and the whole killer POV shots looking through the windows and stuff I think was first in this film. So like Bay of Blood, I think it's important. It's kind of up there. It may not be the high point of the genre, but I think it deserves to be in the very good three.
Just so you know, we've got Crimson Mel in the chat. Hi, Crimson Mel. Hope everyone is doing well. Yeah, I think we're both good.
Yeah.
Now, just a quick question. I'll pop it in very good, as you say. I don't think, to my knowledge, there's been any sequels to Black Christmas, but I'm pretty sure it's been remade a number of times.
It was remade, I think, as Black Xmas. Which one was it? They remade it as Black. It's either Black Xmas first of all, and then they've made it again with a cast of women.
The most recent one, I think, is the cast of women, and it's like a sorority cult or a fraternity cult.
I can't remember if it's called Black Christmas or Xmas, or I haven't seen the remakes, and I probably wouldn't bother.
Bother.
Yeah.
We're going to now look at a film which, something we did on the last stream. We had some films in there which you could argue are maybe thrillers, but I don't care about gatekeeping genres. I think if there's horrifying elements, it can be a horror. This one had quite a bit of notoriety, incredibly famous director. We're going to be looking at Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Thoughts on this one?
Stanley Kubrick's probably my favourite director of all time. It's dated quite a bit, but it's still a very iconic film. Came out in 1971, which also saw The Devils and Straw Dogs, which were all passed uncut. Although I think The Devils was cut a bit, but they all came out the same year. And I think John Trevelyan was the head of the BBFC at the time, and he got a lot of backlash for allowing these films out in the UK cinemas. But I think they're important films because they opened up what was acceptable in cinema and then that kind of like obviously influenced the horror genre as to what they could then push the boundaries and stuff. So, but yeah, I think it's a cult film, you could call it, as opposed to a strictly horror.
Funny you mentioned about the era that it came out in. One of the films that I was going to do a little review on, and I may do it at the end of the show. I may leave it for next week and have a bit of just an overall review segment, including Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's a recent British film called Censor. I recommend giving it a watch. It was one of those films where by the end of it I thought, I think I enjoyed it. It was all right, but then I had a lot of questions, and I was thinking, okay, I could interpret it this way, or it's a film that leaves you with more questions than answers, but in a good way, and it's very much set during that time of video nasties, heightened British censorship, and it's regarding a woman who had an element of trauma in her past involving a family member going missing, and she is kind of taking it upon herself to censor these films, make sure that nothing goes out that could influence people negatively. And I won't go into too much more of it, but I watched it on Prime using a free trial for Mubi. MUBI it's a channel that you can subscribe to on Prime. I just did the free trial and cancelled, but I'd recommend for that era giving that a watch. Now back to Clockwork Orange.
I was
Peter,
going back to that. I actually know the guy who edited it, Mark Towns, who ironically I buy some me videos from through the video groups.
Oh, he edited Clockwork Orange.
No, he edited Censor.
Oh, wow!
And he also did Saint Maud, the Ritual, and the
Yes.
Boardrooms.
Oh wow! I quite enjoyed all those films, really.
He's an alright guy. I brought a few tapes from him.
Now, Crimson Mail in the chat has just said, I know I'm in the minority and I'll be booed, but I don't like Clockwork Orange. I think it's weird and fairly boring. I'm ready to dodge the trash thrown at me. It's
I think it's certainly dated, and it's. I remember seeing it on like a bootleg tape but when it was never officially banned, but it was like unavailable still. And I think it did have a slightly, I don't want to say cheap look, but it didn't quite, like the English setting and stuff kind of made it seem a bit that the production values weren't as good as Kubrick's other films. But I think numerous rewatches, I like it more. But I think I can see why people don't like it, but I personally think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kubrick. I've not watched all of his films. Like I've not seen like Eyes Wide Shut or the Doomsday films, Doctor Strangelove. I've not seen that. I do like Clockwork Orange, but then Space, whatever the space one was.
2000 Space Odyssey.
2000 Space Odyssey, yeah. It wasn't for me. I watched that with a lot of high expectation. It wasn't for me, but then again, I love The Shining, and very different to the book. But where do you see Clockwork Orange on the list? What are your thoughts on its placement?
See, I'd want to put it into excellence just because of how iconic it is, and in terms of it's one of those films which will be around forever, like a lot of his films.
That's fine.
I mean, up to you. Would you put it down very good? I'm gonna go excellent.
I'm happy to go with excellent.
I can see why people don't like it. I can see why people find it boring, and that's fine. But personally, I would put it in excellent.
That's fine. We're going to move on to. I think we're going to do a director double bill here, and we may follow up with another director double bill. We'll go with the more famous one, I would say, first. Dario Argento's Suspiria.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on this film?
I put it in excellent. What's the next one?
Yeah, to be honest, if you haven't seen Suspiria, watch Suspiria, and not the remake. The remake, I thought
the remake was one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. That ending. The ending was just like my brain was just melting.
The ending kind of felt like, have they suddenly run out of money or something? Like, did Tilda Swinton and her 3 roles take all the money?
Yeah, it went really cheap, and with that whole kind of like it wasn't an orgy. I can't remember what it was, but it just was so stupid.
There's only 2 moments that I thought, okay, kind of interesting. I'll just say the dance room death, the contorting. I thought that was kind of interesting because there's some imagery which I hadn't really seen before. And there was a moment where someone is being chased. It might be Chloe Grace Moretz, maybe, I'm not sure, but she's running down a hallway and these kind of black holes are appearing in the floor. Kind of inventive, but it doesn't really mask the fact that it's 2.5 hours of my life that I won't get back. Did not like it.
I like the fact that he changed the tone of it. He didn't go for a straight remake of the colors, and he made it look unique and like kind of a Russian, and the color grading was very good.
Yeah, it's got quite a contrast to Argenta's
Yeah, I mean,
original.
respect the fact that he went and did his own thing. Whoever the director was, I can't remember, but the film itself was just a
Yeah, I can't. I'm sure it's a fairly famous or up and coming director for the. I can't remember either, but
yeah.
I don't want to look it up.
The,
But
the original was just like it's just everything. Once again, it's like Halloween. It's that kind of perfect from the camera, the music, the sound design, the lighting,
the soundtrack,
editing. Everything's just like it's full on assault. From the very opening scene where Jessica Harper arrives in the airport and there's a storm going, and it's just making the doors as she exits kind of seem menacing. It's a masterpiece, really, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah, I agree. Crimson Man on the chat says, haha, no hesitation. I'll give it a watch. Yeah, highly recommend. Highly recommend.
Do you know this Crimson Mail person? Is there a friend of yours? Or?
He's part of the MOS network. He has a show on the network. He has a fan into the occult based in the States.
All right.
Now, we're going to go on to... Now, we're talking about doing director double bill.
Yeah.
Have you heard news that apparently Dario Argento is finally returning to cinema, and this film may not be absolute trash like his last few have been?
I don't even know what his last few were. You
he
did
Dracula 3D.
That was when I went to Cannes Film Festival. I think that was being promoted. So back in 2012 or something.
I think that might have been his last release.
Was that his last one?
So, yeah, but he's got a new giallo, and apparently early signs. You don't know until you watch it, but early signs look good. But the other film we're going to do from the 70s. Now, I will preface this by saying I watched this around the same sort of time as Deep Red. I love Deep Red.
I like Deep Red.
Didn't really like this one that much. That's Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
I've not seen it. I've not seen the Bird with the Crystal. It's got a good title.
Yeah.
I think Deep Red is really good.
Oh yeah, I'd love Deep Red. I prefer Deep Red to Inferno actually. I think Inferno's good, but I think Deep Red.
I've not seen Inferno. I think it's meant to be more of a retread of it. Suspiria, but not as good.
It's a sequel.
It's part 2. It's part of the Mother of Tears books. Is it Mother of...
Yeah, the Mother of Tears is the third one he did starring his daughter more
so
recently.
Three Mothers trilogy or something, isn't it? It's part 1 and...
Third one is... Oh my
Mother
God.
of Tears. Mother of Tears,
Mother
but nobody...
Tears, yeah.
I think that's when he went into his crap period.
Yeah, it's a weird film. It's so weird.
Inferno, okay, and Mother of Tears is avoid.
Mother of Tears, yeah, definitely. It's right down there. Bird with the Crystal Plumage, yeah, it just...
Is it your standard kind of giallo sort of... It's kind of a retread of Deep Red and not as good. But like Tenebrae. Tenebrae is okay.
I think Tenebrae's better.
Yeah.
Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Yeah, it's got some okay... I think it's a Goblin soundtrack again. It's got some okay set pieces. But there's nothing majorly memorable. You've got...
I think he make it around the same time as like Four Flies and Grey Velvet and
around that era.
A whole load of films with similar titles.
Yeah, it's...
Actually, it might be one of his first ones, actually. Yeah.
I
think it might be one of his first films, Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
Yeah, it's definitely very early. I think it's 71 maybe, or 70.
Right.
I can't in good conscience put this type of Argento film in bad, but I will say decent.
No, probably decent. I mean, I probably, when I get around to watching it, I'll probably agree with you. I'll probably enjoy it and then forget it.
Yeah, it is what it is. We've now got a film from quite an acclaimed director. I don't actually think I've seen this. I've seen the recent remake, which was very forgettable. I've only recently started watching some early David Cronenberg. He's a director that I've never disliked. I do like things like The Fly and Scanners.
I say I like Scanners and Videodrome. I think they're very good.
Yeah, but I've never really gone on to he's not been like a John Carpenter for me.
Which one is this in? Is this Rabid or Shivers?
This is Rabid. I've seen Shivers recently, and that is actually quite good. but I've not
That's
seen Rabbit.
Shivers is the one in the tower block, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the weird slug thing coming out, and it's very strange. That was like his really early one. I think Rabbit came afterwards. That's got Marilyn Chambers, isn't it? Who was a porn actress, and she's on a motorbike. I can't remember too much about it. I saw it a long time ago. I probably got it on DVD. I probably was drinking whilst I was watching it. I heard it's somewhere. But no, I mean, I it's probably in the decent category. I honestly can't really remember what happens in it either. Wasn't there something like under our armpit? There's like teeth or something.
So I know in the sequel, not the sequel, the remake, which I don't know how closely it follows the original. Beautiful woman is involved in a bike or a car accident. She has to have plastic surgery at quite a specialist clinic. But that then gives her this kind of like growth, I believe, which is basically hungers for human flesh.
This sounds like it, yeah.
So I think that it sounds like it may be quite similar. So yeah, we'll pop it in decent.
I will give it another watch. Like I said, I've got it on DVD somewhere, or Blu-ray. I'll give it another watch. But I can't really pass judgment because I can't quite remember.
Well, I can't remember if you said if you've seen this one or not, but it's a classic, and I love it. The 1970, it's either 74 or 78, I can't remember, adaptation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Starring
Donald Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum, Leonard Nimoy.
I have seen it probably when I was around 8 or 9. I remember the ending.
The ending is iconic.
Yes.
There's also an iconic moment where someone is sort of being transformed or melded with a dog, because you see a dog running along with a human's face that barks at the main characters.
Right.
I think it's a great film. I don't think it's necessarily excellent, but I think
it's probably very good. I think I would need to watch again. And
Crimson Mouse is a great freaking film. One of my fave movies. I even enjoyed the remake.
Is that Body Snatchers or Rabid? Are you talking
about? Body Snatchers.
Okay.
Are you talking about Body Snatchers or Rabid, Crimson Mel? Let us know in the chat. I know there's been quite a few adaptations of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and one which I was going to include in the 90s, but we didn't get to it. But it was my first Invasion of the Body Snatchers film, was Abel Ferreira's Body Snatchers, the one that's set on a military base.
Right.
That freaked me out as a kid, and that was my first Body Snatchers. Mel says that was my kind of first introduction into that story.
Yeah.
But I think there was one, I think maybe 10 years ago, called Invasion. I've not seen that. I think it's been adapted a number of times.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the 1970s Donald Sutherland one?
I think isn't that the most iconic one? Just that final shot of him pointing and screaming.
Yeah,
that film. I need to give it another watch. It's been a long time.
I can lend you the film if you like. I think I've got it on Blu-ray somewhere. It is excellent. Once the situation starts becoming apparent to the characters, just the real sort of sense of paranoia, because you don't know who's a pod person or who's real. The fear of falling asleep. There's a moment when some of the characters have fallen asleep, and you're seeing the creation of the pod people just starting to kind of form next to them. And even when a character, unfortunately, they've fallen asleep and they've kind of, their body has been transferred into this pod person, they just sort of turn into ash almost. Really, really, really good film. I kind of want to put it in excellent. Do you agree, or do you think it's not quite there?
It's up to you. Personally, I wouldn't put it quite there.
Do you think very good?
I think very good. You can put it into excellent if you want, but then maybe we can move it when these other ones come up.
Okay, yeah, agree with that. If we have others,
I haven't seen it in a long time, so I can't really pass that much judgment on it. But
we can always move them around. I mean, if we get one of these rows filling up, we can. The rows can overfill, but then it will make the stream. I'll have to start adjusting the stream and stuff. So if we need to move things down, or
just chuck them into awful or whatever,
yeah.
Make a mockery of this whole whole system. Okay.
Now we got another film where I have only seen the sequel, and I only saw it not long ago because I didn't even realise there was an original. So tell me about The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
I do like this. So the remake. You've seen the
I've
remake?
seen the remake, and I thought it was pretty good.
I think I saw the remake first of all, and I thought it was very good. That the opening is like one long camera shot going through cinema, isn't it? And, yeah. And the original's very similarly as good. Although I can't remember it. When did I see it? You watch a lot of films, and they all kind of blur into it. He's the guy. He's got the trombone. He's killing people with a trombone, I think, isn't he? Got a bag on his head.
The bag on the head, yeah. It's kind of like almost Jason from Friday the 13th Part 2.
Yeah,
before.
I think that's where they got the idea from Friday the 13th Part 2 from this film.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember when I was watching it, I enjoyed it a lot, and I thought it was very good. But then that's the same as the remake. I remember watching. I think I might have got like a double disc with both the remake and the original on. I watched them both.
I think aren't they partially? I know this was a bit of a trope in that time. Isn't it meant to be partially based on a true story?
True story, yeah. There's something about a series of killings going on in a town, and then I can't remember much more about it. But yeah, no, I think it was inspired by a certain degree. Once again, it's been a long time since I should have watched these films again, like the night before, to try and refresh my memory. But no, I remember thinking it was very good when I watched it, and thinking that's one I should recommend to Terence.
Do you feel then it falls into the very good bracket?
I think decent.
Decent.
It's not quite
a good popcorn film, but maybe not massively memorable.
No, I think you got like your masterpieces, you got your very good ones, and then you got your good ones. This is a good one.
Okay.
It's not quite influential. It's not an outstanding. It's good.
Now, from an early slasher to I don't even know what genre you could call this film. I saw a lot of this director's other work before seeing this, and I loved it, but I also didn't really necessarily understand it. That is Eraserhead.
Oh, Eraserhead.
What are your thoughts on David Lynch's debut? I believe Eraserhead.
I watched it in 2006 on a VHS tape, which I borrowed from the Arts University in Bournemouth. It was unique. I can't remember a lot about it. It was, I think, once again, it's very iconic. It's very ambitious for his first film. I think it took him 5 years or something. I remember reading about there's a moment where he kept him running out of money, and he kept him putting the filming on to hold. And there's like a moment where someone walks down a corridor and goes to open a door, and they go into a room, and between the moment they open the door and going in the room is like 2 years apart. And the main actor, he was getting visibly older as the filmmaking process went on, and he got to the point where he was just going to try and finish it up with like plasticine models of the actors because it was taking so long. But yeah, it's a very strange film. It's probably better to talk about than actually sit down and watch. So it's all about the kind of the anxiety you have when you have your first child, and just kind of trying to describe that in a very metaphysical, metalogical sort of way that David Lynch does.
Yeah, Crimson Mel says, unique is a good way of putting it. Eraserhead is something I give him credit for getting it out.
Yeah, it's David Lynch's unique vision.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the need to go back and watch it again, or but it's certainly an original and creative film that he made. that's decent. Next one.
That's what I find with David Lynch. I love his work, and I love kind of thinking about it, hypothesizing it, but I don't really repeat watch. Like Mulholland Drive, loved it, only watched it once. I may go back and watch it again. May go back and watch Eraserhead again, but you
got to respect the fact that it's a bit like Christopher Nolan doing for the big budget films, making these incredibly original, personal, unique I mean, obviously Christopher Nolan's more mainstream, but when you watch something like Tenet, which is like it's not your normal dumb blockbuster. It's in a lot of thought goes into it, and a lot of and David Lynch is one of those people on even more extreme who is able to make these films. We should be thankful that he exists and he creates this stuff. Even if I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
We're going to talk now about a film which you have a poster of behind you. Dustin Hoffman in Straw
Definitely
Dogs.
Oh, Straw Dogs.
I
love Straw. I mean, once again, it's not really a horror film. Go on, Karen.
I don't think I have seen it all the way through, to be honest.
You liked it that much? You had to turn it off?
I think it was more of a case of catching it on TV, and it was, I think, maybe partway through the almost like rape scene thing. I do not know what's going on here. So I haven't really seen it. Tell me about Straw Dogs.
I love Straw Dogs. It's like Sam Peckinpah. He's making a western in Cornwall. It's all about how far you can push someone until they eventually revert back to their primeval kind of internal rage which exists in all of us, and it's a great. To me, I love it. I think it's just a great, unique, not really unique, but it's just a very well made film. It's a very, at the time, very controversial. It's probably still quite controversial now, and it kind of builds up, and it's got a great ending. It's very English. It's an English Western, which kind of explores a lot of Peckinpah's Wild Bunch type Western philosophy, masculinity. Came out at a time when the Vietnam War was going on, and a lot, influenced by that kind of like social, political things. It's a good film. It's very hard sometimes to describe why you like a certain film, but
so
yeah.
The kind of understanding I have of it is Dustin Hoffman is quite a, no, I wouldn't say under the thumb type man, but he's not like a typical alpha male.
He's a mathematic teacher or philosopher type character. Goes back to this house in the country which his wife, played by Susan George, her father used to own, and he's very kind of meek and reserved. And then these people are there, these who used to know Susan George. One of them is her ex-boyfriend. There's this very problematic rape sequence where her ex-boyfriend is the one who rapes her, but she kind of starts to enjoy it, but then it's all about, and then they kind of like, there's this guy who's killed a child by mistake, and Dustin doesn't realize that, and he kind of like harbors him in the house, and the villagers turn up, and they're like trying to get the guy out, and he's standing his ground because it's his house, and then he finally fights back and discovers his internal. It's like the classic anti-hero. It's like Taxi Driver. In the end, he's become a man, but through violence, but kind of lost his soul and his humanity in the process. It's a great film.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess that this is gonna be an excellent.
No, I was gonna put awful.
You're gonna put
no,
awful?
Excellent. No, excellent. Stick out. It's one of my top 5 favorite films. Straw Dogs.
Now we're gonna do another director double bill.
Okay.
And I'm gonna as per the list, I'm gonna follow your placement. But I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a massive fan of either of these films. So the first one, which I think is this director's first one, is The Last House on the Left. Tell me your thoughts on Wes Craven's The Last House on the Left.
Well, these are once again, these are both Last House and Hills of Eyes, which will be the next one. These are his best films. These are independent guerrilla filmmaking at its best. I mean, when I first saw Last House on the Left, I was a bit confused. It wasn't. I was expecting more kind of polished Chainsaw Massacre type thing. But then after several rewatchings, and if you can get the comedy policeman out of the way, I think it's a great film. Once again, it's very similar to Straw Dogs. It's like a rape revenge film. It's It's about pushing the nice family, her parents, to the point of their breaking point and reverting back to their kind of Neolithical kind of like primeval sort of like instincts, and exploring the fact that this kind of like violence exists in all of us. Once again, the whole Vietnam War was raging at the time, and that was like the first kind of like war to be covered by independent news channels who didn't filter out the kind of horrific thing that American soldiers were doing. It's the first time that the Americans public kind of realized that they weren't the good guys. They weren't, these heroic people going out to fight this war, that these soldiers were involved in doing terrible things. And that kind of reflected in the way the cinema changed with films like Straw Dogs and Last House on the Left. And I think it's a great film. I think, there's lots of moments in it. I can see why maybe you don't like it, but also it's quite inspiring to me as well to watch a film like this when it's just a group of actors in the woods.
I think I can completely appreciate that. I think my kind of view on it is, and I suppose maybe it's just my interpretation with other directors. Someone like John Carpenter, who's one of my favourites, has quite a unique feel and look and tone to his films that's very much him. And I suppose I felt with this that my first Wes Craven films are, the Scream films, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I think, was maybe my first Wes Craven film.
Yeah.
And obviously these were done. This and the next film were done way before that, probably a lot smaller budget.
Yeah.
But they just feel so. Maybe that's part of the view. They just feel a lot kind of grimier.
Yeah, but that's what I like about them. I like. I've got a book about it somewhere. I like that. I like the kind of raw, kind of visual, sort of like grindhouse feel to it. It's not as polished, and it's kind of maybe that's kind of how I like horror sometimes. It's got to be more kind of like Night of the Living Dead. It's got to have a kind of a more raw, visceral sort of feel to it.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. Where do you see this one on the list?
I personally would say it's excellent, but it's down to you. I mean,
maybe in excellent. We'll put it in excellent.
I do want it in excellent. Yeah.
There we go. So moving on to his next film, as we touched on briefly. Let me just find.
I hated the remake.
The Hills Have Eyes.
I love The Hills Have Eyes. I think it's a great film. It's taking the same sort of thing, the nice American family being pushed to violent acts that was explored in Last House, and kind of polished it and made it a bit more of a toned down film, but it's still it's a great film. And his use of traps, which then came later on in Nightmare on Elm Street. So Last House have the people making traps, and there's traps in Hills of Eyes, and I just love the desert setting and the family.
What do you think it is about the remake that you hate? Because I have seen the remake, didn't mind it, can't remember it.
Yeah, I think there's like these kind of deformed.
They're more like mutants.
Yeah, mutants kind of over the top, sort of like it gets a bit, kind of glossy, overproduced sort of thing, and I like these kind of like raw, more independent, going out shooting it on 16mm in the desert.
It was inspired, wasn't it? I believe by a true tale of a Scottish kind of cannibals.
Yeah, and also the Donner Party. Was it the Donner Party as well?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Donner Party? No, I think I'm getting confused with something else. No, I think there was a Scottish tribe of cannibals lived in the mountains.
Yeah, that does ring a bell. So, do you think this is on par with Last House or lower? I think is the real question here.
I would put it in excellent again, but that's just me. But I think Last House is the better of the two.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Different things. Put it up there for now. We can rearrange later.
We're gonna go now for one. Now the title of it, I believe, this is another one of those films that's had many titles. can you confirm for me, Peter, if Zombie is the same film as Zombie Flesh Eaters?
It was called Zombie 2 in Italy because when Dawn of the Dead came out, that was called Zombie. So when they released it in, it's Zombie Flesh Eaters is the most common title for it. But when it came out in Italy, they called it Zombie 2 because Dawn of the Dead was called Zombie, and they tried to pass it off as a sequel. And then there was some sort of court case over there, and they argued that the makers of Dawn of the Dead don't own the word zombie, and so they couldn't copyright it. So they were able to release it as Zombie 2.
Okay, that was a workaround.
Yeah.
Was this Lucio Fulci?
It is Lucio Fulci. I like it. I love it. It's a great film. Got the preset here.
Now, this film, I think I saw Fulci maybe at slightly too young an age. The age where you're like, oh, I'm into horror. Yeah, I like horror. And then you see some Italian splatter gore and his obsession with eye damage. And
great scene with the splinter and the maggots, and his dead look dead and rotten compared to like George A. Romero's in Dawn of the Dead, where they're just blue faces,
yeah.
like it's rotten and they're coming out of the ground. And it kind of takes it back to the voodoo kind of origins that the zombies films originally came from. There's that great sequence underwater fighting a shark.
Yeah.
It's a real shark and it's a real actor underwater dressed as a zombie fighting a shark. And then the village burns down at the end.
I think I haven't seen it for so long. I think I did see it once, as I said, a bit too young, and I believe I picked it up on. I only ever got Volume 1. I never saw Volume 2, but I think it was on Box of the Band. Yeah, some gems on there, some not so gemmy gems.
The first one had more gems on the second one,
yeah.
I think I first saw it on, going back to talking about Mark Kermode, they had Censored Season on Channel 4.
Okay.
And they had, the first night was a double bill with Evil Dead 2 and Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Oh, wow.
Mark Kermode talking in between, and there's like a little talking about censorship and stuff. And then the second evening was, I think, Bad Lieutenant and Salon Kitty, the Tinto Brass film.
Oh, right, okay. I've heard of Bad Lieutenant. I've not heard of the other one.
It's like Salon Kitty's like kind of Nazi exploitation.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I remember taping all that, and that's the first time I saw Zombie Flesh Eaters. I really like it. I like the music.
Where do you reckon
great
it goes?
And watch and game.
Where do you reckon you see it in the list then?
You see, cause I know we've got Dawn of the Dead coming up, and Dawn of the Dead is more of an iconic film than Zombie Flesh Eaters. But I would rather watch Zombie Flesh Eaters, which says more about me. Let's go very good. Let's go very good.
We'll go very good. We'll
put Dawn of the Dead in excellent because that's where it's going to have to go. But
we'll come back to Dawn of the Dead. We'll do another one.
Okay.
Instead. Now this okay, this is probably one of the most famous films on the list. There's a few very iconic ones, but you could probably argue this was maybe the most successful.
Exorcist?
No, that is coming up. Jaws.
Okay. Jaws.
Yeah. You a fan of the film?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was the birth of the summer blockbuster, wasn't it? It was the first one. Was it 74, 75?
I think so, yeah, 70
and
years
then
around.
A couple of years later, in 77, you had Star Wars. So like the 70s was like the birth of the summer blockbuster of Jaws and Star Wars. I mean, what is there not to say about Jaws? Everything's the music, the camera work, the story, the vertical zoom where the camera zooms in and pulls out, the acting, the lines. I mean, you could argue it's not technically a horror film, but then you could argue it's kind of like Poltergeist. It's your sort of film you see as an introduction to horror at an early age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I caught it on TV, maybe a BBC One screening, and just the opening.
Everything.
Me out. Yeah.
There's even that decaying head on the end of the water, with his eyes missing.
Yeah.
I was quite seeing that when I was younger. I was quite
seeing the chap near the end getting eaten on the
Yeah,
boat. That was, I mean, even though you look at it now and see the shark and think, oh, you know, God, it's still
yeah.
a very much a classic. So
I think Spielberg used the shark really well. Like Toby Hooper with Chainsaw and John Carpenter and Halloween, he kind of underplayed it because he didn't work properly, so he had to only kind of use it sparingly. And but yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to be an excellent.
obviously going to be an excellent.
You can watch it. It's going to be here for them in the next 50 years as a landmark film.
Yeah, it's so Crimson Mouse said, Jaws, surprised to see that here. Very good movie, and it certainly made me paranoid about going to the beach. I think everyone, when they see it for the first time, is then maybe a bit more tentative when they go to the beach again.
Yeah.
We're now going to look at a film I don't think I've seen, and if I have seen it, might have been like a pizza night, you know, a few years ago around yours, maybe, or around Peter Vincent's.
Right.
Torso.
Oh.
I don't know if I've seen this, so tell me a bit about Torso.
Do you know I watched it with you around Peter Vince's house with beer and pizza.
Oh, it was one of them.
I've got the Seamus release down there. It's the one with the tagline, which is when whores meet saws. I think there's an opening scene where they're all just, it's Italian horror, Euro horror, so I instantly love it. Shot in some sort of sunny Spanish or Italian location. Just naked women. There's a guy. I'm pretty sure they all blur into one actually, because you got what have you done to your daughters, and you've got all these other ones. I think it's the one with the motorcycle. He's got the helmet on. He's on the motorbike driving around, and he's killing women who are like models or something.
Oh,
I could watch it right now.
Where do you see this one going on the list? Torso.
Let me just quickly read the. Let me try. What's it about? Blah, blah, blah. Is that one?
I always get it mixed up in my head with Pieces.
And stripped nude for your killer. Oh, Pieces as well. I love Pieces. Is it the one I'm thinking of? Gee, I think decent, but I could watch it more times than other films.
More times than Eraserhead.
Yeah.
We're going to look now at a film we mentioned a bit earlier on. We had a bit of a deep dive, briefly in the franchise with the new one coming out, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre by Toby Hooper.
Yeah.
I mean, should we just go straight into excellent?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's next? Like I said earlier, it's all about, it's everything from the opening image of the. What does it open on? It's a sound, freaking sound, the flashlights, isn't it? And the corpse, and then they've got the sunspots on the moon and the armadillo, and just everything about it's more. People think it's more violent than it actually is. I think 4 people die in it. There's very little blood, and only one person dies with a chainsaw.
And the thing is, I'd probably say those 4 deaths are all very unique and scary.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of my all-time favourite. Well, I say favourite, just freakiest is that the first kill with the hammer.
Yeah.
Just because in this creepy setting,
the camera going under the swing, and the house grows bigger because of the angle and the tracking, and it starts to the characters go, everything.
Franklin's death in the wheelchair, that always.
Yeah.
Because the tension is really ramping up at that part, and he can't go anywhere, and that's. Yeah, excellent. The only person who dies with a chainsaw, isn't it, Franklin? He is. Yeah. We got hooks. We got hammers.
Hooks, hammers, chainsaw. Who else? Is someone? I'm pretty sure there's 4 kills in it. Someone gets run over by. The hitchhiker gets run over by the truck at the end. And then there's just that constant. And it's Sally Burns constantly trying to escape, and then back in the house and back
Grandpa with the hammer keeps dropping it. Yeah, it's excellent.
It's excellent. Yeah.
Let's now look at this is one that I have seen. I really don't remember much about it other than thinking, okay, this is kind of creepy but also kind of weird. Driller Killer.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on Driller Killer?
I've got the preset, the original Vipco release.
Ah, Vipco.
Oh yeah, what happened to that company? Um, it,
VipcoVaults.com. Get all your DVD needs there.
um, uh, I like it. I don't. I don't want to watch it again.
The thing that I remember most about it that didn't, I think it was also in the book of the band or whatever it was, the box of the
Yeah,
band.
yeah.
Um, I just remember watching it and being like, I don't like how sexual this guy's being with the drill. I'm sure
All
he's
right.
like gyrating on people and he's like drilling them, and not for me, not for me.
Uh,
That's all
um,
I remember.
I mean, it's Abel Ferrara again, isn't it? And it's kind of like, I think let's just put it in decent because it's iconic in certain parts. It's well made. It's a grubby New York 16 mil look to it. It's as good as it is a little bit boring.
Yeah.
And there's a lesbian shower scene and a trap is being drilled. Yeah, it's good.
It's good. Okay.
Just wouldn't go and watch it again
Well,
anytime soon.
we're going to reel out some a few more. We're going to reel out some of the classics, and then we're going to look at what is the top. What is the top of the list? So,
Yeah.
moving swiftly on, this is a film I think is okay, but I want to hear your opinion, and that is the adaptation of Stephen King's first novel, Carrie, by Brian De Palma. I thought it was kind of boring, to be honest. I think the ending is, it's iconic, but the majority of the film, for me, yeah.
I remember the opening in the shower, obviously, and I remember the ending, the split screen, and the telekinesis, and the bucket of blood. I need to watch it again. I haven't seen it in years. I've got the Arrow special edition box set up there, so I've got no excuse really not to have watched it. But I think, I still go very good.
We can put it very good.
Just because it's iconic. It's become pop culture reference. I think Brian De Palma does go a bit excessive sometimes. Probably like Scarface, isn't it? That other De Palma film, which is very iconic, but when you actually sit down and watch it, there's only certain bits which are really iconic, like the ending.
The end, yeah.
The rest of it is like Scarface. The build up to the ending, there's some good scenes in there, but
yeah, I mean the whole bit in the gymnasium, and then the very the last little jump scare.
yeah.
Crimson Mouse says carries. It's a very slow burn, but the ending is iconic.
Yeah.
So do you reckon very good?
I think very good.
Okay. Moving.
Watch it again. I might change my mind after watching it.
Moving swiftly on, another one which you may say for the majority of the film isn't horror, but I thought the ending was terrifying when I first saw it, and I think it still holds up now. Although I do think elements of the film, or not elements, sections of the film are quite dull, but I still kind of love the film, and that is Don't Look Now. Tragic film starring Donald Sutherland.
Great sex scene.
The great sex scene. And also, the finale just it freaked me out when I first saw it. I didn't even see it young. I didn't even see it like a youngster. I heard about it in film class in college, and start watching it and thinking, okay, it's quite a tragic film and whatnot. But it gets to the finale, you're on tenterhooks, and the reveal of what is going on, I thought was terrifying. What do you think about Don't Look Now?
I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
I think just it's one of those films that you can pull apart and study each scene and each sequence, and which as someone who's interested in film likes to do, probably more than your normal person. But like the use of color, the use of like just the opening sequence and the color red and the Venice locations and Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie's performance in it, and there's point in their marriage which is breaking down, and and it's a really tragic moment. It's at the ending where, yeah.
If you haven't seen Don't Look Now, it's a key piece of cinema, and sometimes horror gets looked on as less than in the cinema.
This is
panel.
elevated horror before it became elevated horror.
Yeah, it is up there.
It is a great film. It is just the music as well, and the everything in English. It starts out in England, and it's Nicholas Roeg, isn't it?
Yeah.
I really like Walkabout Leader as well, which is also another film which is hard to describe why you like it, but I like it.
I've seen that one.
I think Don't Look Now is up there with the excellence.
I think we're gonna do 3 more as we're cracking on a bit with time. So we've got a few which we haven't touched, but we'll do these 3. Now this is one that was mentioned. Oh, we'll make it 4, but we'll make it a quick 4.
Well then,
Halloween. We can't have a list of 70s horror and not have Halloween.
I think decent. I mean, it's all right, isn't it?
You're serious?
No, of course I'm not.
Excellent.
Probably said it's the most perfect horror film of all time.
And
it's kind of interesting. When was it? Was it 78? Something like that?
I think it was 78 because the sequel was 81.
Yeah,
I think this.
But it's interesting if you look at like I talk about Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead came out in 68, and that was the kind of turning point in horror cinema, because before that was kind of like films were like Hammer horror films, and like the monsters were from like faraway places, and they were like mythological kind of creatures and things, and like Dracula and Frankenstein, and then Night of the Living Dead brought back horror to like home, and like made it about people that live down the street from you, and they're people like you, and it's and then that kind of led on to the films of the 70s, and Halloween's the film. It invented the 80s slasher craze, even though it came out in the 70s, and Night of the Living Dead created the kind of Vietnam War kind of like influenced kind of like violence in study of violence in films, which kind of you could see through the 70s, even though that came out in the 60s. Is my ramble. So Halloween's kind of like the reason why you had all the slasher films in the 80s, but it's a 70s film.
Yeah, it's just iconic. It's just iconic.
Yeah.
We're gonna go on to The Omen.
Right.
What do you think about The Omen?
I need to watch it again. It's.
For me, my gut is very good because I love the story. I'm very much. I mean, as we mentioned earlier on Crimson Mal, there's a lot about the occult and that area of things, and I've always been very interested. Like, I'm not religious in the slightest, but I find the whole imagery and story of this kind of like Lucifer and the Antichrist and the original Omen. Yeah, it's I think it's a great film, but it's not one that I routinely go, oh, it's Halloween, I want to watch The Omen, or let's give it a rewatch.
It's probably a little bit too polished for my. Yeah.
Would you agree? Very good.
Yeah, but very good.
Okay.
It's because it kind of came out as a response to another film, which I'm sure is coming up in a minute, which will be in the excellent category.
Is that The Exorcist?
It will be The Exorcist.
Yes. Now, I'm gonna do a little bit of a preamble on The Exorcist. So, I remember renting it on VHS when it got released again in the UK, as it had been banned for a while.
Yeah.
It had the hype of being the scariest film ever. And so my expectations were high.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate it when I first saw it. I thought, it's not really that scary. I mean, there's a couple of bits which are a bit unnerving, but it didn't really do too much for me then. It has, over the years and over repeat viewings, become one of my favourite horrors of all time.
Okay, yeah.
I think it is the ultimate battle between good versus evil.
Yeah.
I think the flashes, the quick flashes of the Pazuzu's face are brilliant. There's elements that I never even noticed or appreciated when I first saw it about the actress's friend.
Was a line about can you spare something for an old choir boy?
Yeah.
When he's just a little moment that flashes back to earlier on in the film. Once again, like you, I mean, it's never been a film I really loved, and like there's certain horror films I love, but I certainly appreciate it, and I think it's an important film. I remember it's one of the films that kind of got me into the kind of video nasties and stuff. So I remember there was a guy. If you remember Diamond Free ads, remember that
Yeah,
magazine?
that rings
That's
a
how you
bell.
used to sell things. How you used to sell things before eBay. You'd put an advert in this paper that you could then ring up someone, like if you want to buy an old mattress or whatever. And I remember one time flicking through it, and someone was in there that had listed The Exorcist, £15. Here's my phone number, sort of thing. This is when it was still banned.
Oh, right.
So yeah, and I think my friend got in touch with the guy, but no, actually he didn't. I don't think he actually brought The Exorcist. He ended up getting a catalogue from him, and we brought films like The Chainsaw Massacre, and Clockwork Orange, and Last House on the Left, all these kind of like films which are still banned at the time. So, but yeah, I think I first saw The Exorcist when it actually finally got a certificate. So
Yeah.
1990, James Furman finally left the BBFC. Much praise. Because it was one of those films on his hit list, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Straw Dogs and Chainsaw Massacre, I think, with the three on his hit list, wasn't it, that he would never release for no real good reason.
I mean, even the novel it's based on as well is
The first film to be nominated for Best Picture, first horror film to be nominated or to win Best Picture, wasn't it?
I think it was the winner for that.
Did it win it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, when repeat viewings, I've become appreciated a lot more. When I first watched it, I wasn't really paying attention to too much of the of the plot. But there's so many different little things that I've then picked up on repeat viewings, not just like the flash imagery, but also like the story elements. I never really appreciated the mother wasn't just trying to protect her daughter because her daughter's been clearly possessed, but also could she be implicated in a murder? Did her friend's death that was because her producer friend was found at the bottom of those stairs with his head twisted all the way around. So basically possessed Regan had killed him. So there's a lot of things which I never really appreciated on the first viewing, and repeat viewings, I think it's excellent. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we will do two more. I think there's two that I definitely think we can't not have on the list. One we haven't mentioned and one we have. We'll do the one that we have mentioned. We mentioned it when talking about zombie flesh eaters, and that is, we'll do the theatrical, because I think there's a few different cuts. The theatrical cut of Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
George A. Romero.
I couldn't tell you what the difference are between different cuts. There's Dario Argento one, isn't there?
I think there's the score is slightly different. The Argento one is it's just a couple of slightly longer scenes. There's not a huge amount of variation.
Yeah. It's a good film. It's an important film. It was about the rise of consumerism and stuff under Reagan. Was it Reagan?
I think it was Reagan era. Yeah.
It was like they filmed it in the very first mall that was being built at the time, which in America, and it's all about people's obsession with buying stuff that they couldn't really afford, and these zombies kind of mindlessly going back to this mall where
back to the things they did when they were alive, except they now want to eat flesh.
And they want, and because these people are stuck in the mall, and first of all, it seems great because they got all this stuff and they own all this stuff, and then as time goes on, they become more and more bored, and it just becomes this kind of meaningless existence. And I just think it's let down by the zombies themselves. That's just the blue-faced zombie thing.
Just to jump in, going back to The Exorcist, Crimson Mel says that the person who inspired the movie, Roland Doe, real name Ronald Hunkeler, passed away recently, but he actually went on to work with NASA.
Who was Roland Doe? Was he the vicar?
No, so The Exorcist, the novel, which obviously the film was adapted from, was based on a real life case of a young boy, Roland Doe, whose real name.
Right, so he was the boy that was actually possessed, not the person who treated him.
So he's only recently passed away, but he worked for NASA.
There you go.
I'd agree with your assessment on Dawn of the Dead. My favourite of the George A. Romero trilogy, because I'm not really a fan of the later trilogy, if you would call it that. I think Land of the Dead has some moments, but there's a lot I didn't really like about it.
Yeah.
My favourite of his trilogy is Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
It's the more downbeat overall in terms of it's just kind of hopeless.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the story, but the zombie effects, it just insane in that film. They're so
Yeah.
good. And Dawn of the Dead, I think it has a great story, a great setting. The characters as well are really quite good, quite well rounded. But
Yeah.
the zombies are blue face, grey face. Some of the kills and the bites are quite good, but the
Yeah.
actual zombies themselves, I think, especially in today's lens,
I just think that I'd rather watch Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
I think it's just got more of a raw, visceral, my favourite phrase. But I don't know. I prefer Night of the Living Dead. I think it's more of a atmospheric horror film than Dawn.
So
but people love Dawn. People rate Dawn as being the best of his trilogy and all that. But
yeah, they do. Yeah, it's
a great film. It is a good film. It's a good film.
Where do you see it on the list?
Should we do very good?
I think very good.
Excellent.
If
excellent to me, really.
Yeah, like I say, Day of the Dead is my favourite of that trilogy. And Dawn is a good film. It's really good, but it's not my favourite of his. We're gonna do one more. We have got a few more on the list, but we're gonna just do one more because we don't be here all night. We got work in the morning.
Yeah.
We are gonna do The Wicker Man. And not the Nicolas Cage. The bees! Oh my God, the bees!
What's going on?
He's just going around punching women for an hour and a half and then getting his legs broken and having bees put on his head.
Eavesdrops on the people downstairs explaining the plot, and he's there going, I don't understand what's going on. Flashback to girl in he couldn't save on his motorbike, who hit by a van or something like that.
God,
it's great though. I could watch that. It's a very strange film, The Wicker Man. I love it. I love British horror films. I love British folk horror. Blood and Satan's Claw was also on the list, wasn't it?
We can get that one in as well if you want. If you want to do a quick get to that quickly.
Do both side by side, I think.
Okay. So Wicker Man, real brief synopsis if people don't know the kind of general tale.
Policeman goes to Ireland looking for a missing girl. Turns out that he's all a plot. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin it for you. He's searching on this island for this missing girl called begins with an R.
Yeah, I can't remember the name.
Rowan was
something like that.
Yeah, played by Edward Woodward. Christopher Lee's dancing around in a dress, and it's lots of British folk pagan traditions and stuff like that are all being coming up with these islanders, and then it's all he's trying to find this girl, and it has the big iconic ending and some songs.
Did you? I know that there was an idea for a sequel which sounded batshit crazy, and they did actually do
Christ for Cowboys. They did, yeah. Christ for is because it was written by William Schaeffer. He came up with the idea and stuff, but then it's directed by Robin Hardy. And one of the criticisms people say about it is the direction isn't very good, even though the original idea and script is very good. And then Robin Hardy, who was the director, who didn't write the original Wicker Man, he wrote a book called Christ for Cowboys, which was a sequel to it. And then he ended up making Christ for Cowboys as a sequel, even though it is really Anthony Shaffer, who I think passed away a few years ago, was his original idea. So really, he should have been the one doing the sequel.
There was all I remember. I know that there was the film, but I remember an idea for the sequel was some sort of bird or mythical thing saving a particular character from a particular doom, which just sounded.
I have no idea what it's
about.
about.
Crazy. So where do you reckon this is on the list, and then we'll get to Witchfinder.
It should be an excellent. Have we got enough room?
I think it may shift. It's fine. We haven't got anything.
He'll put Hills of Eyes down into very good.
Well, we haven't got anything in awful or bad, and I doubt we will. So I think we can have a big excellent list. It's just it cuts off the bottom, but I don't think Blood and Satan's Claw is going to go into awful.
And Blood and Satan's Claw, very good.
So yeah, anything you want to? I have seen it. It was a weird film, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, it's once again it has lots of British folk cult sort of ideas, and I think it's let down a little bit by the ending. I can't really remember it, yeah, but it's got good music, it's got great visuals, it's a great story about There's it's about the devil, isn't it, or something? And he's infecting these people, and there's a rape scene in it.
It's an odd film, but it's kind of classic British folklore.
Yeah.
Where do you see this one on the list?
Put it very good.
Very good.
Very
Okay.
good.
And we will just do one very, very quick one because I've never seen it, but I know you may have seen it, or you know the notoriety of it. The Devils, I think it's called.
Devils, yeah. That's the third film that came out in '71, along with Straw Dogs and Clockwork Orange. Now I've seen this twice, and I can't remember. I think Oliver Reed there's a bit where he's got an inflatable crocodile.
Oh, really?
I might have made that up. Is that or was that a story that? Because I know Ken Russell he lived local. He lived in Brockenhurst, didn't he?
Oh, really?
He used to go into this when I was at college at Brockenhurst. There was a bookshop called Bestsellers Bookshop, and the guy in there said that Ken Russell used to come in quite a lot and used to tell him about he was trying to make a film in his garage. That might be in the film actually, with an inflatable crocodile in his garage, with the House of Usher or something, because he couldn't get funding anymore.
All right.
But The Devil is a very strange film. It's I've got the DVD. I watched it on pre-cert tape many years ago.
It's still never been supposedly released fully uncut. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mark Commode championed for years to try and get it fully uncut release. I would need to sit through it again. I think it's very visually sort of stunning. I think there's it's about some nuns that go crazy. Oliver Reed thinks they're possessed. That's kind of a bit sexy. and he ends with him being, I need to give it another watch. I've got it on DVD.
Where do you see this then?
Until I watch it again, I would just put it as decent.
Decent. Okay. Well, we're going to do no more films added to the list, but we're going to do very quick fire. I'm going to ask Peter what he thinks is the best, and we're going to do it kind of one against the other. So, Peter, is Clockwork Orange better than Suspiria?
No.
Okay. Is Invasion of the Body Snatchers better than Suspiria? Why is the place moving around? There we go. Is Straw Dogs better than Suspiria?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me move that around. Is Last House on the Left better than Straw Dogs?
No.
Is The Hills Have Eyes better than Straw Dogs?
No.
Is Jaws better than Straw Dogs?
Yes. No, not to me, but it is.
Is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre better than Straw Dogs?
Yes. Yeah.
Is Don't Look Now better than The Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
No.
Is Halloween better than The Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Halloween should be number one, so put that at number one.
Is The Exorcist better than Halloween?
No.
Is The Wicker Man better than Halloween?
No.
Okay, well there we have it. We have...
I put Wicker Man round, swap Exorcist and Wicker Man round. But then I'll put Invasion of the Body Snatchers last. Anyway, yeah, okay, right, excellent.
Okay,
next bit.
So Halloween is the best film ranked by myself and Peter Goddard of the 70s.
There you go.
Okay, Peter, thank you very much.
Okay, I thought you'd do them all, like put them all into some all.
No.
Okay.
No, we don't want to be here all night. Don't want to be here all night. Just going to briefly chat about what I've got coming up on the show next week. So I'm going to be joined by Twitch streamer and member of the MOS network. I've co-hosted a show with Lawrence previewing, I can't remember which WWE show it was, but it is Twitch streamer Erratic Agent. And what we're going to be doing, we're not going to be doing a tier list. We're going to be bringing to the table our personal top 5 zombie films. But I don't know what his top 5 are. He doesn't know what mine is. So we may have some crossover. We may rank the same film, one higher, one lower. But it's going to be an interesting discussion and dissection of horror films. Not just horror films, sorry, zombie films to be more specific. Peter, thank you very much for coming on this evening's show.
Thank you for having me, Terence. It's been a pleasure.
Where can the viewers watch your films?
All over the place.
So you've got
some on Prime, some on like different companies have released them. Vipco have just put out Harvest of the Dead Halloween Night. So I'd go to www.vipcovaults.com and buy at least 20 copies of that.
get a free A3 poster as well.
Get a free poster. You know, if you're lucky, the director might sign the or directors might sign the DVD.
If you want it devalued.
Yeah, it could be worth any less than. Yeah, there's some if you really want to. I think there's stuff on Amazon Prime, things like that.
Yeah, so you've got
to watch.
you got Season of the Witch, Don't Look Now, and also the original.
Don't Look Now, no, was it? It was Anything Now. It's called Anna and the Dead. I wish I made Don't Look Now.
Anna and the Dead, yes. So check those out. Crimson Mouse is good stuff. Peter and Tezz very much enjoyed. Thanks for watching Crimson Mail.
Oh, thank you for coming along and commenting. It made it seem like it was worthwhile. No, it did. It's nice having you here. Thanks, Crimson Mole.
Yeah, thanks very much.
I'll buy a drink if I ever see you.
So yeah, like I say, we're going to be talking next week about zombies. I'll do some reviews of a couple of films I watched recently. Also, it's going to be interesting to. I've got to do a spoiler-free discussion on the new Halloween, not Halloween. What am I talking about? Texas Chainsaw Massacre being released on Netflix on Friday. So talking about other shows on Wednesday, Andy's here on the MOS Network with Retro Chat. He did a great show last week about the new adventures of He-Man, a bit of a retrospective discussion on that animation. And then Sunday, of course, you've got Lee and Lawrence on the Ministry of Slam at 7 p.m. So thanks again, and see you around.